Speaking of the next Republican nominee,
Let's talk about someone who's not going to be the next Republican
I don't know.
nominee.
You know, people still think Chris Christie is the front runner here. I still have extensive doubts. But this thing is not going to go away anytime soon. By now, many of you have probably already heard the story. For 4 days back in September, 3 lanes, or 2 of the 3 lanes that fed in to the busiest bridge in the country, coming from Fort Lee. There's a bunch of different sort of entrances onto the George Washington Bridge. There are 3 lanes leading from the town of Fort Lee. For 4 days back in September of this year, 2/3 of those lanes were shut down. Nobody knew why these lanes, which caused incredible havoc in Fort Lee, like literally traffic jams throughout the entire town. First responders couldn't get anywhere. Businesses got problems. Commuters were obviously late and delayed. This town, which had a Democratic mayor, one of few who refused to endorse Chris Christie, one of few who did not get any of the Sandy aid, apparently, refused to endorse Chris Christie. And Chris Christie's best friend from his youth, the former blogger, then appointed head of, I don't know if he was the head of the Port Authority or just some aspect of the bridge, ordered these lanes to be shut. Later, when there was an investigation, claimed that there was a traffic study being done, but the guy in charge of traffic studies was not made aware of this. Another one of Christie's aides has since had to resign. Bill Baroni, who was put in charge of the New Jersey side of the Port Authority, had to resign. It's since come out that Chris Christie bitched out Andrew Cuomo for their Port Authority guys on the New York side trying to look into this. And now Chris Christie's playing it off like this is no big deal. Look,
Chris Christie's buddy was appointed by Christie for a specific newly created Port Authority post called Director of Interstate Capital Projects.
In other words, in charge of punishing anybody who needs any transit into New York if they haven't supported Chris Christie's political ambitions. The bottom line here is, thank God, and I imagine at this point we would have heard about it. Maybe it's not the case. Nobody died because of this traffic, that there was no ambulance that couldn't get to where they were going or fire truck that couldn't get to go where they were going. But the bottom line is, this is Chris Christie's modus operandi. Remember, everyone knew he was going to win this election. He spent millions of dollars, millions of state dollars, ensuring that he wouldn't have to deal with any Democratic turnout for Cory Booker by scheduling Cory Booker's special election less than a month before the general election that was going to take place anyways, so that he would be able to pad his numbers. That's how it's important to these governors who who have national ambitions. He was willing to punish the people of Fort Lee to punish this Democratic mayor for not endorsing him. This is the guy who's supposed to be above politics, who's all supposed to be just about being a technocrat, right? This one episode may not dog him, although it might. But it's going to set a narrative for who Chris Christie is. And Joe Scarborough can deny it all he wants. this is the guy who Chris Christie is.
This story, I think, could actually really come back to bite him, because it's one of those type of stories that mainstream media covers during these campaign cycles. It's not something overly policy oriented. It's not one of those like wonky stories. This is something that affects people. This is what local news actually talks about: traffic closures, things like that. This is a story that I think will really come back to bite.
It's also from a national narrative. It is so stereotypically New Jersey. Like, that is, the oldest, like, Jersey-style stereotype.
Right.
Like, yeah, you don't like it? Here's a traffic jam. I also
It'd be a real shame if something happened to that on-ramp.
No, exactly. Exactly. And I said yesterday, I was talking about Chris Christie and this global warming compact that he pulled out of. And it's another case of the projection that Janine talks about, because he's always talking about gimmicks and people just do this for a show.
Right.
He's the most gimmicky politician in America.
Yeah.
He's the biggest political fraud in America. And I do think, like with McCain in some respects, the same media that giveth taketh away. And if this type of thing sticks, it could get really ugly for him.
You mighteth be righteth.